What? You missed that. I appreciate that I have the opportunity to deliver the rest of this talk. So, um, often we are left with questions after talk, and sometimes you ask me, and sometimes I do have an answer, kind of. And a couple of people approached me and about something that I said in last week's Dharma talk. I said that the Buddha advised that love brings pain. And so if we love less, we experience less pain. And so, rightfully so, I was challenged. How can this be the case? So, the Buddha always answered specific questions that were asked by specific people. And frankly, I don't remember the context in which this quote came up. That's really good to keep in mind when we read the Pali Canon, that the Buddha always spoke to specific people. So when he addressed his monks, he used a different language and different examples than when he was addressing householders. So it's a very interesting exercise to wonder what was the question that provoked such an answer. Little side note, the Pali Canon contains the oldest Buddhist texts. But tonight I want to talk about Zen as something very ordinary, the kind of ordinariness that shines. It's not about transcendence or escapism. It's about fully living in the middle of our actual lives, meeting the moment with honesty and care. Practice, like, it's not about becoming better or wiser or more spiritual. That might happen, and it's a great byproduct. Our practice is about becoming intimate with what is there. Even when this here is messy, painful, uncomfortable. It's about waking up not as a dramatic event that you write home about, but it's about a way of being that reveals itself through our patience and attention in Zazen. I do invite you to trust your own experience. No explanation or philosophy can do that for us. We each, on our own, must discover it directly in the body and in the heart through the slow and faithful practice of Zazen. Every breath, every small gesture, every act of care is already the way. It's not something separate from life. It is life, lived consciously and compassionately. I want to sit here and honestly teach from my own experience or from what teachers I trust have said. That sounds true to me. This life that each one of you lives includes everything. If you have children, the raising of them. If you have grandchildren, being there for them, feeling grief, loving imperfectly, showing up when we are tired. It isn't about having no pain. It's about not turning away from pain. It's about being steady enough and tender enough to hold it all. I was even more of a fool when I began practice. I truly believed that practicing Zen meant if once I got it, it does not hurt anymore. What a fool I was. It still hurts. However, I can give it more space and I can accept that there is pain. It's part of life. If you never have experienced any pain, please talk to me afterwards. I really want to talk to you. But in my life, there has been pain, there is pain, and it's okay. It's not about fixing ourselves. It's not about saving oneself or others. Zazen is not something to think about. It is something we embody. The upright spine, the breathing belly, the mudra resting in our lap. All of this is Dharma teaching itself. The body knows how to wake up if we only let it. When we see our own minds running in circles, planning, regretting, judging, the body helps us laugh at that, not out of mockery, but out of deep compassion. We laugh because we recognize ourselves and our deep patterns. We laugh because even our confusion is part of our practice. Sometimes I think it's especially my confusion that is part of practice. Stop searching for that perfect version of practice. Stop searching for this perfect version of yourself. Trust what you have. So when we sit, walk, listen, or speak, we can get in touch with a teaching. Show up as you are. Trust the ground underneath your feet and let ordinary life be the way. One of the quiet virtues of Zen practice is patience. Not the patience of gritting our teeth and waiting for the next thing to happen or a better thing to happen, but the patience of allowing everything to unfold on its own. When we come to practice, many of us bring the same habits that shape the rest of our lives. That's only natural. We want to understand, we want answers, we want to know how all this works and what we're supposed to get out of it and when it's going to happen, etc. That's all right. That's natural. But in Zen, explanations can only take us so far. And sometimes when I say that, people say, but those explanations help so much and it makes it all work. It works about as well as if I watch a weightlifter and I expect some serious muscle growth. Won't happen. And you will not benefit from what my experience was. Sometimes it helps point the way a little bit, but it's very limited. So, you could hear the most beautiful explanation of Zazen, but it's not going to help you that much. Until you sit down, breathe, and meet your own mind, the explanation is only the map, not the territory. It's like reading about water when you're thirsty. Patience in practice means trusting trusting the taste of water, trusting the sitting itself, this breath, this posture, holding my hands, the next breath. It's not something to be understood from the outside. It will reveal itself from within. And this takes time, and it takes patience, because the mind will always prefer ideas and concepts. It will ask, am I doing this right? Everybody else is doing it right. I'm the only one who's not getting it. That's when real practice begins. Because every time we let those questions be without rushing to answer them, we are cultivating our patience. We are learning to stay with not knowing. Zen masters through the centuries have said the real understanding ripens in silence. It doesn't come from being analytical, it comes from being intimate. You sit long enough, you breathe long enough, and I promise you, something will happen. I just don't know what. When we're patient, the Dharma begins to teach us directly through our body, through the breath, and the texture of just this moment. The explanations still exist, but they no longer matter. My teacher, Norman Fisher, once said that in practice, our insights come when they are ready, not when we demand them. Zazen does mature us in this way. It teaches us to wait and to trust the slow unfolding of our own life as the path itself. So it's not a patience that is passive. It's not waiting for something grandiose like enlightenment, whatever that might be, to arrive. It's the active willingness to be here with yourself, to sit through confusion, to let wisdom grow. This kind of understanding is alive and of much greater value than any talk you might hear. It's not made of words, but of your own presence. When you realize this, all these explanations will become less important. The real thing is happening right now in the simple act of sitting upright and breathing. Now I'm going to come to the part that I had to skip last week. I wanted to talk a little bit about Ehe Dogen. In case you have not heard the name before, Ehe Dogen was a Zen master who lived in the 13th century in Japan. He founded a monastery by the name of Ehechi, and from his teachings grew our school of Soto Zen. From a very young age, Dogen was deeply moved by the question of why, if all beings are said to have Buddha nature, we must still continue to practice. And this question led him on a pretty wild journey that changed the face of Japanese Buddhism. He traveled to China seeking an answer to his questions. In China, he met his teacher Ru Jing, who told him to study Zen is to drop off body and mind. And those words, he must have heard them just at the right moment, because he dropped body and mind and had a deep understanding. When Dogen returned to Japan, he started to teach that Zazen, just sitting, is itself practice enlightenment. He wrote that practice and realization are one, meaning that each moment of wholehearted attention is the full expression of awakening. Dogen's writings, especially the essay collection called Shobogenzo, remind us that nothing is outside of the way. Dogen saw the Dharma in mountains and rivers, in birth and death, in each moment of our ordinary lives. What is the essence of our practice? Was one of the questions that Dogen asked himself. And in response to the question, he wrote an essay, a fascicle named Bendowa, a talk on the wholehearted practice of the way. In it, he tries to express all the things we can't quite say. And it's a very worthwhile thing to read if you are so inclined. Dogen writes, practice and realization are one and the same, because it is a practice of realization. The practice of beginners is itself the whole of original realization. And I think that is pretty radical. Enlightenment is not a reward at the end of a long road. It is the living activity of this moment, right now, when we give ourselves to the sitting, when we sit with full trust, nothing missing and nothing extra. Dogen says that is when enlightenment is already present. Yeah, I know. Dogen writes in Fukan Zazengi that our Zazen is the Dharma gate of repose and bliss. And I can't tell you how often I've sat there in sesshin with painful knees and just wanting to do something different. And I go, yeah, Dharma gate of repose and bliss, I got it. So our Zazen is not an escape. It is participation of our whole being in the great stillness that is being awake. Dogen calls continuous practice gyochi, the dynamic functioning of enlightenment itself. He says that we don't practice to attain awakening, but the way awakening expresses itself through us. Every breath, every thought, noticed and released, every act of returning to the present is the boundless life of Buddha manifesting as you. So when you take your seat, you don't need to think, I am now meditating to get something. I'm now meditating to become enlightened at some point in the future. Trust Dogen. The very act of sitting upright, breathing, listening, is enlightenment in motion. Even our wandering mind, even our forgetfulness, our confusion is included. Returning again and again to this body and this breath is not failure. It is the endless compassion of practice enlightenment. The Zazen I speak of is not learning meditation, says Dogen. So when you sit, remember that you are enough just the way you are, and nothing at all is missing. When you think, I'm no good at this. I am failing this class. I'm not getting enlightened. Don't worry. It is not so. Zazen is not a path that leads you somewhere else. It's not a self-improvement program. It is the full expression of awakening right now, where you are with the person who is sitting on your cushion. Do I have more time? A couple more minutes. So, what do we do with all that once we get off the cushion? Because if Zazen, if our practice only has value when we are at mountains and waters and we're sitting here together, it's pretty useless. Let's face it. But I want to talk about another aspect of it, something very human and something very practical. Take it off the cushion. Apply it to your life. And how do we bring that stillness that we find on the cushion into the chaos that surrounds us? How do we live in a way that reflects our practice? My teacher, Norman Fisher, often says that living a Zen life is not about being calm all the time or about maintaining some perfect state of mind. It is about becoming a little more awake in everything we do. He reminds us that awareness is not something we conjure up on the cushion and then we lose it as soon as we get up. Awareness is the thread that runs through every moment of our lives. We return over and over again to this awareness, no matter where we are or what we're doing, washing dishes, talking to a friend, being frustrated, driving to work, listening to the news. Each moment is an opportunity to wake up. So the question is not, am I doing this right? The question is, am I here for this too? We give up maybe a little bit on trying to fix and control everything. Our practice does not end when we stop ringing the bells. Our practice actually begins when we leave the Zendo. Each moment of ordinary life is an invitation to bring forth the mind of practice. When we live this way, something really subtle begins. We become a little bit less reactive. Maybe we recognize that we are being caught by our own preferences. We listen with great compassion. We begin to live from a place that is more spacious and more gentle. Maybe we don't always cling to that little self that feels separate and desperate and afraid. This is what makes us fully human. To experience life directly with all its beauty and ugliness and difficulty without shutting down. Compassion is not something we need to generate. It's our birthright. It has been with us since the beginning of time. So maybe we can take the Zen life as about practicing presence in the middle of our ordinary day. Practice is not a break from the world. It is how we live with clarity. Another Zen teacher by the name of Sherry Huber takes these same insights and grounds them in some very practical tools for daily life. What gets into our way of truly experiencing is our conditioning, the patterns of thought and the behavior that formed a long time ago. Maybe it really worked at some point. Maybe we were rewarded for a certain behavior pattern. Maybe we were rewarded for being unproblematic and quiet. We learn to please, to protect, to compare, to judge, to strive. And now these habits are on autopilot, like your computer's background program. And most of the time, we don't even see our own conditioning. Well, Zen practice is one of the places that allows us to gain some clarity. Sherry Huber says, the voice in your head is not your friend. And please hold this phrase correctly. This does not mean that people who have a mental condition, that they're actually hearing voices in their head. I'm not speaking to you if that's something you deal with. I'm speaking to myself and to those of you who are more normies. So the voice in your head is not your friend. She doesn't mean it's your enemy either. But she means that the inner critic, the constant evaluator, is simply conditioning speaking to you. My favorite phrase that I ever heard in connection with that inner voice was someone who said, yeah, it's the voice that once you stop smoking tells you that you're a quitter. It's this voice of judgment that hammers at you all the time. When we identify with this voice and we think, this voice is I am this voice, we cause much suffering for ourselves. When we see the conditioning, it does lose its power. In real life, when someone criticizes you and the mind says, oh, I always fail, you can see through it and say quietly, there's that old pattern again. You don't have to fight it, but you also don't have to believe it. In that moment of awareness, you are already free. That is the teaching of disidentification. To disidentify means to stop believing that the thoughts in my head defines who I am. When we sit in zazen, we see that thoughts come and go non-stop. Awareness does not come and go. Awareness is what sees those thoughts as conditioning. So, Zazen creates the space for you. What's beautiful about our way of practice is that it meets us exactly where we are. You don't have to be a certain kind of person or have a special spiritual talent. You have to notice what's going on. When the mind wanders, notice. When you feel triggered, notice. When you forget to notice, notice that too. Zazen teaches us to stay and listen. And remember, it's not about being calm. It's about being real. So the application of Zen in daily life is simple, though not easy. It is choosing awareness over conditioning. It is living from process, not content. It is remembering again and again that we are not the voice in our head, but the vast awareness that hears it. It is easy to forget all this when we're entangled and enmeshed, when we're getting upset at the news, or our spouses, or our kids, or our dog. But when we sit still, we can stop grasping and running, and compassion can flow through us naturally. Most of the time, we think in small, isolating terms. We think, I need to calm down. I need to get the Zen thing. I need to figure it out. I need to figure out my life. There's nothing wrong with thinking that. It's just pretty limited. So remember tonight, when you get up, when you rise from your cushion, practice continues. Each step, each word, each act is the one great causal condition expressing itself through you. We can activate it, not as something we possess, but as something we live. May our sitting and our words and our actions activate that great condition of compassion and love for the benefit of all beings. I hope you found something in those many words I spoke tonight. And remember, if you don't, forget every single word and just go back to your zazen. And now, the last poem. It's called Stillness. It's also by Gina Puro. Let me be an apprentice to stillness. Let me be an open vessel, filling with the vastness of each moment, overflowing with every loving, grieving, lustful, painful, ecstatic, aching, raw sensation. Moments that birth and die, contract and expand, arise and dissolve. Let me embody exquisite gentleness and the strength to soften with my tendrils stretched wide, shimmering in receptivity. Let me breathe into each question without ever needing to know the answer. Thank you.